Welcome to All Star Quilts. I'm Eleanor Burns. My story begins when I purchased this antique feathered star quilt, possibly made around 1910. Well, this bright turkey red fabric gives the date away. The feathered star is not a common pattern found in antique quilts because it's so intricate. Well, recently I finished my first feathered star, and it is still not common to make. My son Orion and I came up with the idea of teaching this quilt as a mystery quilt, so students would not be intimidated. Orion refined the mystery quilt idea by inviting 4 guests, all celebrities and all friends, to join in the fun. So next came the feathered star quilt, surrounded by the 4 stars named after the 4 friends, and we called it the All-Star Quilt. Well, the first block I taught was called Mariannes Star. My guest was the ringleader of the famous Fons and Porter dynasty and publisher of Love of Quilting magazine, Marianne Fons. Well, she was dragged on the set by a Keystone Cop played by Orion. Well, we had so much fun accusing her of taking the quilt, even though I knew I had it hidden. Well, my students produced many beautiful quilts. This one is called Black Starburst, made by Rana Krishnan. It is the quilt of the book on the cover, just all-star quilts. It looks great. Well, for a dramatic effect, Ronnie combined neutral shades of bold black and white to create a stunning feathered star quilt. You know, it was quilted by Danny Fisk. Now, Danny's intricate quilting designs really show up on this calm tone-on-tone fabric, and the big star provides negative space for her beautiful feathers. Wonderful. You know, I have so many more beautiful quilts to show you, but for now, let's go to the sewing room. This is my favorite colorway. It was made with the fabric collection called Christine. Now the line is versatile with a combination of values and scales of prints, including a stripe. Now Christine is my youngest granddaughter's middle name. Her first name is Zoe. You know, the fabric is just bright and as pretty as she is. She's such a spunky little girl. Well, the feathered star has beautiful magenta and wild orchid points surrounding the vibrant peacock snowball center, you know, and then this charming snowberry print gives the quilt an old-fashioned look. Teresa Barnes pieced the quilt, and Mary Jo Rambold long arm quilted it. Mary Jo's large medallions fill in the corners beautifully. Well, today we're going to start easy with 4 8.5-inch stars in the corners. It's named after our first celebrity star, Marianne Fons. You know, we both started quilting in 1976, the bicentennial year. And this is a wall hanging from Mariannes Stars. Teresa made the wall hanging out of the Zoe line. There's actually 2 lines. Zoe loves purple. So this quilt is appropriately named Royal Purple. Now the star points are a beautiful deep shade, but my favorite part is the fussy cut roses in the centers of the stars. And then that same striped fabric is repeated in the side and corner triangles. Judy Jackson quilted it simply, so even a novice can copy it. Well, that's enough talking about the beautiful quilt. I want to get started. Let's get started on this. So this is the star itself, close up on it. There are 2 major parts. First of all, you have the piece squares. There are 4 of those, and then you have the snowball center. Very beautiful. So the piece squares start out with 5-inch squares. You're going to need to have 2 of the magenta for the main part, and then take one of the polka dots, put it right sides together to it, and then one of the peacocks, right sides together, all 5-inch. Now my favorite ruler is the 6 by 12 ruler because it has that 45-degree line on it. And I like to just drop the ruler corner to corner with that diagonal line. That way I know I'm perfect. So just use a marker. This is going to be your cutting line, so it can be a permanent marker if you want. And then once you do one corner, just turn it around and repeat, drawing an X. And then just repeat it on the second set. Now, I already do have one set finished to show you. Let me draw one more line, and we're ready. Okay, this is the 1/4-inch foot that I'm going to use. Perfect. I just love it. From right here in the center to this outside edge, this bar, it's 1/4 inch. But what is unique about it is from the center to the opposite side, this is also 1/4 inch, because when we sew, we're actually going to sew 1/4 inch away from the line, go across the center, and use the second side to go down. Tricky, but it works great. So let me just move this out of the way, and I'll show you how to sew those patches. Okay, just drop your foot in. Now you are going to have to check with a dealer. Make sure that you can get a foot that's going to fit your machine. Okay, I'm snapped in place. Let's just take this one right here and line up the bar on the left side. The foot is the stitching is going to be 1/4 inch away. I have the bar on the line, and I'm going right down to that center line going across. Go slow, because when your needle goes on it, pivot. And stitch basically a 1/2 inch. That's 1/4 inch on one side, 1/4 inch on the other. Go slow. Okay, needle down, turn again, and now you line up the opposite side, the opposite foot. All right. Going right down there, cut your threads. But you know you're going to do lots of these because you are making 4 stars for your quilt. So you'll get in a lot of practice. Okay, put the bar in the line, slow at the middle, needle down, pivot, go across, 1/4 inch past, put the second side of the foot on. Perfect. All right, I'm going to show you how it looks. Really fun. Exactly like that. You've got that little zigzag right in the middle. So now just take your ruler, line it back up on the marked lines that you made. You're going to cut each square into 4s. Okay, this one right here, 4s, and then take the second set I already sewed and cut into 4s again. Just with these sets, you're actually going to make 4 of those piece squares. Perfect. Amazing. So I'm just going to take one set of each. Actually, that's all we're going to need to have right now. And just put the magenta on the top, drop it, set your seam, open, press toward the magenta, get into that seam, get the second one, set the seam, open. And when we place them right sides together, ooh, that's looking good. So now that the seams are going always toward the magenta, when you put these pieces right sides together, they will lock perfectly. Just get them lined up. Just kind of wiggle with your fingers. Give a little wiggle and get that perfect there. So when you always put your seam on the top going up, then it just shoves into the bottom one so they match very nice. Okay, get those tips all lined up. Use your 1/4 inch seam right now. And you will be, okay, I always take it and lift it up, make sure, finger match it, hold it flat with my stiletto, match up the opposite end. So much fun to do. I will tell you, I think I enjoy sewing about as much as Marianne does. Okay, so now let's just take this and we're going to do a magical swirling. But to make sure we can get that swirled in the center, I want to take my stiletto and just pick out those threads right in the middle on one side, turn it over, and just get the stiletto right underneath those threads So you can just pop them out, pull them out, and it's just in this part of the seam. Okay, so now you can just put it wrong side up and think of clockwise swirling. So you start at, this is 12, and this goes to 3, and it lays down. This is 6, and that's going to go up, and then this is 9. So it magically pops right into, got a few more stitches, and it's going to be the coolest pinwheel you ever saw. Okay, there we go. And just press it flat on the wrong side. You can see that little 4 patch right there. Turn it over, and then just repeat pressing on the last side. So we're going to have 4 for one block. This is going to be the best part. So when you look at the star, it's kind of like squatty. It's just not real perky. It's not tall. So right now we're going to make it into a little squatty patch. So I have a 4-inch square ruler that I did do some marking, but I drew an X first, and then I drew a 1/4-inch seam around it. So you just put that X right in the middle. We're going to square this up to 4 inches and kind of tweak it, move it around. I have a turnable, so I'm just going to cut one side and just go across like that. Remove your fingers, and you can just turn it around and cut 2 more sides. So first you have a 4-inch square. That's looking good. So now we want to cut off 1 inch. We want to make it 1 inch shorter, so we just get that small point. So draw a 1-inch line on the opposite side, and be very careful. Oh my gosh, I have so many students that cut off the wrong side. Perfect. So now all you're going to do is make 4 of those to make a block. Let me get those done. In these fabrics, the block looks very contemporary, but you know the original name was Peaceful Hours. Can you imagine? It was first published in this book, The Farm Journal, which came out in 1877. And I looked through and I just love the names that they gave their little blocks, because this one is called Pleasant Pass. Doesn't that sound like fun? And then I turned. This one is named just Happiness. Just such cute names, because you gotta just love to sew. It's too much fun. Well, we're gonna do the snowball part of the block right now. That's the very center, 4-inch center, 1.5 inch in the peacock. Beautiful. So take a piece of fabric that's great for a fussy cut. This one's perfect. I took my 6-inch square up ruler and I marked off 4 inches with glow line tape. That way, if you're going to cut multiples, you'll always get it right. So if you want, go ahead and put a mark at 2 inches well. I'm just lining it up so that you center the motif. Make sure you have a 1/4-inch seam around the outside edges. Just hold it tight, cut on 2 sides, and then once you cut on 2 sides, how about I just cut this off right here, turn the whole patch around, and this time put the 4-inch lines on the left and bottom edges. Get it all lined up. Perfect. Boy, and when you are done fussy cutting, there's hardly anything left. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So now the little snowball pieces are 1.5-inch squares. I like to use this piece of sandpaper because they don't slide around. And also you have to manipulate them with your stiletto. I have a little 1-by-6-inch ruler. Perfect. I personally autographed every ruler. No, just kidding. But take your ruler, and I'm going to use a fine line on my marker right now. Line it up and back it off just a little from the corner so that when you put your pen down, your line goes exactly on the corner. Perfect. Now, the foot that I want to use is this open toe applique foot. And you can see this little line right here which marks the center. But if you take and you put it on your machine and move your needle just slightly to the right of center, then your stitches will go right on that very center line. So that's what I did. Get it all lined up on there. Okay, now take your square and just put your little corners right side up and line up the square with the snowball underneath. Perfect. Now, I want to line this up with the line on my foot, but hopefully just stitch a little to the right of that center. And I just tell my students, oh my gosh, I'll be happy if you can just sew on the line. That'll work. But I have it just slightly to the right. So that is to compensate for the fold. Let me pull these extra threads away so that whenever you trim and you fold back, that compensates. Should be the perfect size. So I have one that's done. It's all ready. Have all four corners. Now you can just go back to your 6-inch square up ruler, line up the 1/4-inch line with those stitches, and just cut off the little corners. Honestly, these are such little guys. And then just turn this 1/4 inch on the seams again. 2 trims, just take all of these, get rid of these. And now you're gonna set the seams. I prefer steam. Oh, I just love a little bit of steam. Okay, prefer the steam, and then open and just press those pieces flat. And that is all that you need to do to make the snowball. I have 3 units ready. Now comes the challenge. Okay, this is the 4-inch snowball. This one, remember, it's 4 inches, but only 3 inches because we cut off 1 inch, and these are 3-inch corners. So just take the piece squares and turn them around the outside edge. Right now, you're going to see that whole pattern come together, and these are just little 3-inch polka dots. Adorable. Okay, now my rule is to try the first time without pinning. So I'm going to show you so you know what you're going to match. I do vertical rows first, like that. So you take the middle and flip it to the left. Now this one's going to be easy. You just match the outside edges on both of these. But this one is the really tricky one. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my ruler and take a marker that will actually come out if you steam press it, just in case you don't want to see it later. So I lined up my 1/4 inch line, and right here on this seam, we're going to match. That's what's got to match right there. And then if you look underneath, I'm going to show you, this is what's going to match. These little pieces have to match right here. So if we can, that's going to be really cool. So I'll just move them together, bring them over here, and line them up. Just line up the first edges, top and bottom, 1/4 inch seam. This is the easy part. It's that center that is the challenge. Okay, now, just going to take this, roll it back. Ooh, looks like it's going to line up. So just push it right after. You want your stitches to go right on there. And I usually just kind of fold it up, look at it. When I know I like it, put it down with a stiletto. And then do the second one, line it up, looking good. Go right along there. And I'm going to be so brave. I'm going to show you up close. You get to see it the same time I do. That is going to be very, very scary. All right. Cut the threads. All right. Open it up. Ooh, that looks pretty good. What do you think? That looks as perfect as it can be. And then this one, got the 1/4 inch seam up here, and it has the 1/4 inch seam right down here. Perfect. So now, if you think that you can't match it, you have to pin. Some people just have to pin. So I'm going to show you how to pin the seam so that it's going to work good. How about we'll just start right here on the right side. Remember, this will steam out if it's not perfect. Put the 1/4 inch line along the outside edge and just mark right there. Okay, when you put it right sides together, you want to be able to put a pin straight through. So 1/4 inch seam, draw the line, and I usually do it with 3 pins. I want to show you the 3-pin method. The first thing you do is take a pin and just stand it up on the seam. Okay, go right here and put your pin right through on the thread. Put the pin through on the single layer. That looks good. Now you're going to take the pin and push it underneath also on the single layer. And just stand that pin up. Just stand it up, and then take and put 2 pins on each side. Just going to put a pin right here. So some people just have to pin. Now me, if my pieces don't quite match, I just hang it high and keep it moving. Okay, now that should be lined up. So I'm going to just take out my standing pin and sew across. So very brave of me, but I'm going to do it one more time and just see. But it's pretty amazing how these little seams do line up, just so perfect. If you do all of the stitching. Okay, so I'm just going to hold my threads just to make sure I get it started good. All right, from one right on to the next one. And when you get to the pins, then just go ahead, just before, pull out both of the pins. And then the next one, I didn't pin it, so I'm just going to do my magical lineup. Look at it, see if it's good, hold it down, flat with the stiletto, and go from one to the next. So at this step, you know, it doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. Just don't show it to your mother-in-law. Okay, let's see. One more check. See what we did. Open it up. Ooh, that is good too. So I can see just a little bit of my marks right here. So now when I can just steam that out, and that'll be just fine. So all you have to do is the exact same thing when you go across the other way, and then when you press, you always press away from the piece squares toward the 3-inch squares, and then the last 2 seams, just press away from the center, and the block will lay nice and flat. Perfect. If you want to practice on Mariannes Star before you make your stars for your all-star quilt, you can turn it into a small wall hanging. Make your 4 blocks just exactly as I showed you. The center one is just a little different. Has different corners in it, frames the whole quilt beautifully. To do these little corners, take a piece of the polka dot. It's 3.5 inch by 7 inch. Place it right sides together to a dark or the peacock. Draw a center line, 2 diagonal lines, and then just sew 1/4 inch seam on both sides. And then cut on all lines. And then when you open these up, you just square them to 3 inches. And those will go in the corners beautifully. So lay out your 5 blocks, and then you need to have a side triangle. Side triangles come from 1 14-inch square that's cut on both diagonals. And then the corners come from 2 7.5-inch squares. And believe it or not, even if you use a stripe, you can make those stripes all go across throughout the quilt. It's beautiful. So then you sew diagonal rows. The triangles are oversized. So after you add your triangles, be sure and cut off those tips so you can get the triangles on. So you've got 3 diagonal rows, corners are last, and then square the outside edge, add a framing border, an outside border, and you'll have a beautiful quilt. You know, I was privileged to have Marianne Fons appear on my All-Star Quilts webinar. I wanted to thank her for her PBS series, her love of Quilting Magazine, and most recently for her dedication to Quilts of Valor. Thank you, Marianne.